Can you give an example of this? I'm not aware of this issue. Genuine question, by the way. Thank you so much for this comment, because this is exactly what I wanted to dedicate the subsequent videos to my previous one in regards to addressing the claims that I made. And one way that I would like to start this series off, specifically on this topic, is the way that the hijab is perceived. So, and this is very real for a lot of girls out there, depending on the families that they come from, because it varies within culture to culture, community to community, family to family. So for me, and I am not going to be shy, and I'm not going to try to be all politically correct about this, because this is something that I have in a very real sense experienced, where my hijab and me deciding to wear hijab was treated in a very interesting way, to say the least. I started wearing hijab when I was really young, and this was out of my own pure choice. I genuinely had a love for it. My parents in no shape or form got me to wear the hijab at all. And I started wearing the hijab during the time in those early stages where this was even way before my parents and my family decided to be deciding to actively pursue and practice Islam on a very intentional level. So I started wearing it out of love when I was around 4 years old. It wasn't full time, but I would believe I started wearing it full time around 11, 12 years old ish. So there were certain people in my family, I'm not going to name sides, I'm not going to name who, but this person, and I'm going to make an example out of one person here. This person in particular hated my hijab and did not like it at all, and constantly would get in arguments with my parents, and they would try to convince me into being like, you don't have to wear this, you should take this off, and why are you wearing this, are they getting you to wear this? And it was something that I got used to growing up, and the comments just kept going and going. And thankfully, in the last few years, even though I don't really spend much time with this family member anymore, I would still get these side comments, but it's definitely lessened over the years. So this is one way where Islamophobia manifests within the Muslim community, because even though this family member of mine just don't like they don't vibe with that sort of religiosity. It's so, and please let me know if this is something, if you're a sister out there, if this is something that you relate with, because I feel like a lot of us do experience this, but we don't necessarily talk about this. And this mindset 100% comes from this internalized Western framework of, they take that framework of thinking, and then they let it simmer, let it cook, and then it becomes, and it ends up developing into this self-hatred of being Muslim, that they still see themselves as Muslim, but still try to distance themselves away from what being or what looking Muslim is in the first place. So these people, and especially I would say it comes from a lot of immigrants within the West, that they try to distance themselves so much away from Islam because they want to be deemed as desirable within the West, because they've always idolized the West. And because a lot of immigrants, they've come from countries where, and I say this with no hesitation, that a lot of Muslim countries out there, and I'm not going to name names, they don't truly represent what Islam really is. It is not. And if you're not Muslim out there, I would urge you, and if I could make this into some sort of hashtag of pick up a book, I would definitely pick up a laptop. Maybe instead of a book nowadays, pick up a laptop, type Google is right there, learn about Islam yourself, talk to Muslims out there, and learn what the essence of Islam is first before judging it through your countries. Just the way that Muslims don't judge or try not to judge other groups and other religious groups or ethnic groups based on what their governments do, because it's not fair. So what happens to these immigrants when they come here from those countries? They get that what they've been treated, how they've been treated from their government. They take that as Islam. They start hating Islam, even though when they come here, some of them, they leave Islam altogether, or some of them still perceive themselves as Muslim, but then they like to be all like wishy-washy, like a leaf in the air, and they like to turn on and off their Muslimness when it best serves them within whatever group that they're in. So when they do that, it also just creates a different energy within other Muslims, because there's times where within even my culture, when I interact with certain people within the public, and because my culture and my where who I am ethnically and the people that I share that ethnicity with, a lot of them that come here to the West do not like Islam anymore, and they try to distance themselves away from it. And then there's times where, they don't perceive me to be from that ethnicity. They just assume that I'm something else because I'm very ambiguous. When I hear them speaking my language, or just the way they look at me because I'm wearing the hijab, I know exactly what they're thinking. I know that sort of like the way they despise the hijab and anything or anyone that represents it. So not to drag this on for too long, but this is one of, again, many. I'm going to be making this into a little mini series, but one very prominent example of Islamophobia within the Muslim community, the hatred by Muslims to the hijab and even to the niqab. There's even hijabis that like it's just very. It's very, very interesting seeing this, where it's like we're judging sisters for wearing the niqab, or even like it needs to stop at this point. I'm not saying to not help a sister out if they're being forced, because no one should be forced to do anything that they don't want to do. However, don't assume that someone is not making a choice in their life just because you do not choose to do this in your own personal life. Take that one for a little bit.